And the critic. So's the critic. With the critic. Because of the critic. With the nostalgia critic! Hello, if you haven't heard me the past 5 times, I'm the nostalgia critic, and I fucking love Animaniacs. I mean, think about it. Is there any show from our childhood that was better written, better animated, or better handled than this masterpiece? Okay, that was pretty good. But Animaniacs was still incredible. What great jokes, what great music, what absolutely unforgettable characters. And today, I'm paying homage to one of the greatest shows ever. And if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it right. In this corner, co-creator, writer, producer, and story editor, Tom Ruger! And in this corner, writer, producer, story editor, and voice of Slappy Squirrel, Sherry Stoner! And in this corner, writer for Animaniacs as well as Freakazoid, Choppy McCann! And in this corner, writer for Animaniacs as well as the voice talent of Mr. Director and Freakazoid, Paul Rudd! And in this somehow 5th corner, voice talent of Skippy Squirrel as well as the son of Tom Ruger, Honey Ruger! And the Italian stallion himself, the heavyweight champion of the world, Rocky Balboa! Wait, no, he's not in this. But still, we have a big chunk of the people who made one of the greatest shows ever on the video! Guys, thank you so much for coming on the show and answering my stupid questions. This is so awesome. Let's not waste any time. I guess the first thing to start off with is how you guys all got involved with this show. And the person to probably start with is Tom, because... Am I right? You've pretty much written for every cartoon show ever created. I mean, your background's incredible. It's like He-Man, Scooby-Doo, all these huge shows. So you probably had the longest experience in animation, right?
I started as an assistant animator / in-betweener, and then made it up to animator. I began work out here at Hanna-Barbera, just kind of bizarre things like Shirt Tails and Snorks. I got a chance to story edit and co-produce a bunch of Scooby series. Then they gave me a shot to do a new version, which turned out to be a pup named Scooby-Doo. And in that one, we did a lot of sort of Tex Avery wild takes. And that show, believe it or not, was what landed me the gig on Tiny Toons.
I started out as an actress back 100 million years ago, and I was in the Groundlings. I performed at the Groundlings. And a friend of mine at the Groundlings asked if I'd be interested in maybe writing a cartoon. This was for Tiny Toons, actually. So I'd never written anything before, but I'm a huge fan of the old Warner Brothers cartoons. So I got hired on staff for Tiny Toons, and Animaniacs came along, and I jumped at the chance to develop that along with Tom Ruger and everybody.
Growing up, it was either sports or being funny, or being preyed upon. So I chose funny. Paul and I at the time were in a group called Acme Comedy Theater, which is run by Sherry Stoner's husband. She'd already been, brought on board for Tiny Toons and other shows, and when they started looking for writers for Animaniacs, they came down, they said, these guys are, lean and unemployed, they'll probably work cheaply. They're correct.
So when Animaniacs was coming up, she thought she'd just give, John and I a script, and when they were first developing it, and based on that, they hired us.
Now, how did the actual creation of the show go down? Like, what was the process?
Well, Animaniacs came from this whole success at Warner Brothers, where we had made Tiny Toons, and Mr. Spielberg and Gene McCurdy and a bunch of people decided, well, we have to make the sequel now. We were looking for the lead characters for the show. Steven said, we need a billboard name. We can't just go out there with nobody. That stuck in my head, billboard character. So I was walking across the lot one day. I saw the water tower, and I thought, well, that's kind of a, sort of a billboard.
As far as the Warner Brothers go, the initial creation of that was Tom Ruger's. I remember it being first based on his 3 kids that were 3 sons that were very small at the time, and just the chaotic element of having them in his life made him want to do something like that.
What we did was we put a whole batch of cartoon concepts together, Pinky and the Brain, Slappy Squirrel, and we took them all over to Stephen's house on a Saturday morning, which was an appropriate time. We all have like cookies and milk.
Tom would put them up on the big board. He had this big board in his office, and he would pin up names of characters that we pitched and different things like that. And then the artist would do drawings of different characters, and they sort of evolved as time went on, and some fell by the wayside and some stuck.
The last one to make the cut was Minnie and Buttons, and Minnie and Buttons had been jettisoned earlier in our little meeting. And then Stephen's family came in, including a bunch of little kids, and they went over to the Minnie and Buttons pictures and said, I like. So suddenly Minnie and Buttons were back in.
They had a Bible which was literally, I remember it was like 2 inches thick, and it was pretty much all said about what they would be. There was a list, like 5 pages, about what they thought the characters' catchphrases would be.
Paul and I had to kind of, feel our way, trying to use some of the stuff they had and then some ideas that we had.
I remember Deanna Oliver kept pushing this gecko and Chuckwalla, and of course it ultimately turned into the Geico gecko. So Deanna also was the one behind Chicken Boo. She said, we have to do this chicken, and no one realizes it's really a chicken. And it made no sense, and yet we made probably 10 of them. Nick Hollander basically did the Katie Kaboom deal based on his daughter. And of course, Sherry Stoner was, and always will be Slappy Squirrel.
Thank you, Mr. Exposition.
She brought that character in from like a Groundling skit that she had done. So we basically took the concept of Screwy Squirrel, who we all love from the Tex Avery cartoons, and turning that character into sort of an elderly, cranky squirrel. Pinky and the Brain, of course, famously were based on 2 of our artists, Tom Minton as the Brain and Eddie Fitzgerald as Pinky. Basically, those 2 characters were based around the personalities of those 2 writer, director, artists. Minton and Eddie Fitzgerald would be in the room next door, and you'd hear Minton go, and Eddie going, North!
Goddamn brilliant!
That's where the whole Pinky the Brain concept came from, because I always felt that they were plotting to take over the world.
Now that's interesting because I always thought maybe Pinky was Hugh Laurie from Blackadder or something, and I could have sworn that Brain was Orson Welles. He looks and talks like Orson Welles. Was there any inspiration for that?
The voice actor doing the Brain, the beloved Maurice LaMarche, he would always warm up the same way. He warmed up doing the exact word-for-word recording session of an old Orson Welles commercial where Orson Welles doesn't complete the commercial. It's about, Mrs. Covington's fish products or something. And it's basically this diatribe by Orson Welles of him like going off copy on his commercial and getting real ticked off at the engineer in the booth.
Get me a jury and show me how you can say ends your line, and I'll go down on you.
That was where the Brain's voice came from. It came from Maurice just loving this Orson Welles impression, and we said, yeah, I think that'll work.
So was that, this is probably a stupid question, but was that the inspiration for Yes Always, which is a cartoon where the Brain does a voice audition, and almost quotes word for word every line that Orson Welles said in those auditions?
It is exactly the inspiration for that particular segment. And that's the only Animaniacs cartoon in which I actually did my own voice.
Come on, Brain. I write all your best material.
Shakespeare wrote my best material. You write drivel unfit for a light bulb commercial.
Peter's in it, and Andrea Romano's in it, and basically the Brain is just ripping into us.
The finest prairie-fed beef and taste. This is a lot of tripe, you know that.
The finest prairie-fed beef and taste. This is a lot of shit, you know that.
Now, your son, Nate, was the voice of Skippy Squirrel, which of course is a huge part, but on top of that, maybe even more iconic, he was the voice of Baby Plucky from Tiny Toons. And I can tell you right now, everybody in my school was always quoting the potty years. We'd always see, "Wanna go down the hole?"
Wanna go down the hall?
And I'm wondering, Nate, how did you get into this? Was this something that you really wanted to do, or did your father force you to do it, or how did it work?
I came to the voice of Baby Plucky because of my youngest brother, Cody. Cody was 2 or 3 at the time, and he was the inspiration for Baby Plucky. Everything we remember Baby Plucky for, like taking everything he could find and flushing it down the toilet, getting into an elevator and pushing all the buttons.
Elevator go down the hall.
My youngest brother, Cody, did that. And my dad probably thought that was good television, was writing that up.
Yeah, but those were cartoons and this is real life. Don't tell him. He might crack.
I was the lead in our first grade production of You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. So my 7-year-old brain registered that as, oh, I'm going to be a huge actor someday. And I just begged my parents to take me to like every type of like audition for movies and theater, and some reason they encouraged me.
I had to get him out of the city, away from all those bad influences. You mean like peace and love? Exactly.
So at that point, I think it was a no-brainer for my dad to ask me to do kind of an impression of my younger brother Cody as the voice of Baby Plucky. And so that's pretty much how I got my first job in show business, by making fun of my baby brother on national television.
I knew that I could get my kids to perform it the way I needed it to be. So it's a kind of almost a control thing that my prob.
He knows me better than anyone, pretty much. And so very often for a lot of the Skippy episodes, if he didn't write it, he was very involved with the writing. So the dialogue always came out that Skippy's character and his dialogue would fit me like a glove, so it was very easy. It was never strange, but it did get embarrassing. As anyone's father can be, but in these cases, there'd be times, the ones I remember, where I was supposed to give a laugh, and it wasn't as big a laugh as they needed, and so my dad would slowly sneak into the recording booth and start tickling me. And there I was, like, giggling like an idiot with my dad tickling me in front of this room filled with Hollywood professionals.
Now, like Sherry said, a lot of Tom's inspiration, it looks like, came from you kids. Was there anything that you specifically came up with that made it into the show, even though you were just like a little child at the time?
None of my ideas or episodic storylines or characters or anything like that from me got into the story, got into the show Animaniacs, except for this one line. My dad was working on the main theme for Animaniacs, coming up with the lyrics, and he had run out of words that rhymed with Animaniacs.
I know that I spent like a week writing the Animaniacs theme song lyrics, and I probably had like 7 different versions, all with different words.
He had Dot is cute and Yakko yaks, Wacko packs away the snacks, and didn't have the rest of it. It just so happened that I saw on TV that day that our current president enjoyed playing the saxophone in his spare time. So I chimed in with, Bill Clinton plays the sax. And that got into the final cut of the song.
Wacko packs away the snacks while Bill Clinton plays the sax. We're Animaniacs.
It rhymes. It's amazing.
Now, for all of you, when I think of writers on a show, especially a comedy show, I think of Dick Van Dyke. I think of everybody packed in a room and they're all shouting ideas and they're saying, oh, that's great, what's the next line, what's the next line? And did the process work that way, or was it very much an individual process?
There wasn't like, sort of like the Dick Van Dyke thing where we're all sitting in a room together going, okay, what's the next line? We would all go away and, sort of struggle over the scripts.
It wasn't like, the sitcom method where you sit in a room and you break a story and, everybody kind of throws out their 2 cents.
You would come up with ideas for characters, for different stories for different characters, and you'd pitch the idea to Tom, and he'd say, yeah, that sounds good, go write it, that kind of thing. I do remember that Paul Rugg wrote a lot of the Warner Brothers cartoons because he was especially good at that.
Paul, God bless him, he's one of the funniest people on earth and one of the most talented writers on earth. But boy, when he's into a script and he's struggling with it, when it's not going perfectly, it's like you can just see the pain.
I remember I was having problems with an episode called Hearts of Twilight. It was a parody of Hearts of Darkness. And sometimes you get yourselves into a big problem because you're like, boy, wouldn't it be funny if the Warners had to go up studio in a golf cart and sort of stop a director who was spending millions of dollars, and that director would be, Mr. Director, sort of Jerry Lewis and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's a great idea. Let's, And I think I wrote the first 2 pages of that for like a week and a half. And finally I was like, I didn't know what to do. So I went into Tom's office and I said, Tom, I just don't get it. I think I should work on something else. And I remember the only time Tom ever got mad at me, he said, no, this is too expensive. You need to finish it. So I went back in my room and cried a little bit, and then I sort of figured it out.
So you were satirizing a documentary about a person slowly going crazy while making a movie about a person slowly going crazy, and you yourself were slowly going crazy.
That made me cry, but, it was fun. I'm over it now.
It happened because Paul Rugg was writing in that room for like 3 weeks, and his brain was bleeding, and it finally came out.
Hoyle! How'd you with the going? You were there, but here now.
From the look of things, it seemed like there was a lot of freedom, and I know it's a cliche to be like, they don't make them like in the old days, but it almost does sort of seem like that. And I guess what I'm wondering is, was Animaniacs just one of those rare experiences where everything just seemed to go right and everything clicked, or are these experiences really like a dime a dozen?
Well, that was really my first real writing job, and so I now have learned that it doesn't go that well.
You know, it's like we got our dessert first in animation, and then you know, as time went on, we learned what beans tasted like.
Some of the head guys at Warner Brothers, the big mucky muck, said, well, you can't do shorts. Whatever you do, don't do shorts. And we said, well, why not? And it's because there's no precedent. No one knows how to do them. You have no model to follow, which is hilarious because, of course, there were 35, 40 years of these gems, these 7-minute gems.
Most shows, it's 3-act structure. You know what you're gonna do. Stories have a beginning, middle, end. They're half hours. They're 2 11 minutes. You know, it's much more simpler and easier on the editing budget.
Quite a few of the writers that eventually came on to work on Animaniacs were people that I knew through sketch comedy. And they weren't animation writers per se when they started out. In fact, not at all. John McCann and Paul Rugg and Peter Hastings and Deanna Oliver, these are people that I all knew from sketch comedy. The first thing that they wanted to be was funny. None of us knew exactly the wrong way to do it, or the right way to do it, so we just did it the best we could in the funniest way we could.
Mostly we had Tom Ruger as a great producer. And he would bring us all in. People would say, well, I think I want to write one where they goof on Albert Einstein. And normally it was like, great, you have a go do that. That'll be great. And today, in a lot of shows I've been doing, you can say, yeah, I want to have them goof on Albert Einstein, and then it's like, okay, good, go away and write exactly what that would be, but don't write it. So you do sort of a 3-page outline about what'll happen. The nice thing about Animaniacs was there was really none of that.
You'd get assigned a script, and that'd be your script. It was loose. I mean, ultimately, it was your job to get the script done and get it in, but you had plenty of help there to get you through the rough spots.
There was a lot of freedom. We didn't really have a lot of people hovering over us, telling us what to do, or telling us that was inappropriate to do, or that kids wouldn't get this or that or the other.
I personally never had as much freedom before or after than I had during the Animaniacs.
Sometimes in a network there are 50 people reading your script, and you'll get competing notes from different people. And we didn't really have that. It went to Tom Ruger, go off to Steven Spielberg, and that was it.
We were very, very lucky in that regard. I mean, it certainly changed now.
This was at the dawn of the imitatable behavior thing. So, they were afraid that any behavior with a common household object that children could imitate would, in turn lead them to do that and then, trigger a lawsuit.
It's certain educational elements that have to be involved when you're dealing with certain hours of the day for television and all of that stuff that I still don't understand.
There was a scene in Dracula where there was something about turning into a bat. Wacko pulls out an actual bat and hits the vampire. Well, they didn't care for that. They said you can't use a real bat. Tom Ruger, in a masterful stroke, got around it by putting wings on the wooden bat, and somehow that made it okay.
So a bat with bat wings was okay, but a bat without bat wings was corrupting the youth of America. All I gotta say is that I'm glad most houses don't have anvils and mallets lying around.
Right. Dynamite, except for certain areas of the Southwest. We're safe there.
If we got any sort of inkling that somebody wanted us to be more educational or have more of a theme, then we would mock that, like with the Wheel of Morality, that sort of thing.
Wheel of Morality, turn, turn, turn. Tell us the lesson that we should learn. Moral number 2. And the moral of today's story is...
Now, I did a countdown a long time ago called the top 11 naughtiest Animaniac moments, and to this day it continues to be the most viewed Nostalgia Critic video. And looking over these jokes again, I gotta say, how did you get away with half of these risque jokes? I mean, they're just unbelievable.
You know, I don't know. I don't know how we got away with them.
I don't know.
I have no idea how.
A lot of it is benign neglect.
I did see that segment of the Nostalgia Critic, and I love it. The one from, it's on the boat. It's something about finding fingerprints.
I found prints! No, fingerprints.
I don't think so.
I mean, we obviously we put that in, and we just said, oh, let the censor have a laugh and call us. And I guess the censor was away that week because that's still in there. It's amazing.
Probably one of my favorite exchanges where, you know, Yakko sings all the planets.
Travel on to Neptune, that's a gassy, freezing ball. And cold and tiny Pluto, it's the furthest one of all. There you go. That's our solar system.
You forgot Uranus.
Good night, everybody.
I think I put that in as a joke and expecting Tom or someone in authority with good taste to cut it out, and they never did. So, but then again, you know, Tom wrote Lake Titicaca.
Let me sing that for you. Lake Titicaca, oh Lake Titicaca, why do I sing of its fame? Lake Titicaca, yes Lake Titicaca, 'cause I really like saying its name. Titicaca! Thank you.
It was all double entendre, so it was more naughty than anything, I think. You know, we were trying not to be really mean, but we were being sort of naughty.
You know, you couldn't do it today, but we did it then.
Our gatekeeper was pretty much as twisted as we were, so I think that's the problem.
You should be ashamed of yourself for even thinking it.
Now, something I hear writers do a lot, especially on kids' shows to get around the censors, is that they'll have a joke that's a little risque and they think the censors are going to pull off, so they put in an even bigger joke, something really shocking and really risque to distract from the smaller risque joke. Did you guys ever do anything like that?
That's exactly right, and so you fight like mad for this really outrageous thing that you know should never be in there. You fight for that so that when the other thing, they're so exhausted, they say, okay, you can have the other thing.
You guys pretty much satirized, well, everything. You did movies, you did shows, you did music videos, people. Did anyone ever get upset at the jokes you made?
Tim Robbins.
Really?
We had won the Emmy, the daytime Emmy, and we were coming out, and Tim Robbins was escorting Mr. Rogers onto the stage, and as he passed us, we were walking. He said, "I love you. I love Animaniacs, but please don't ever put me in your cartoon. Don't make fun of me." And I said, "I'm sorry. I think we've already done it."
I think Country Joe of Country Joe and the Fish called. We did a Woodstock Slappy. He was upset about something we had parodied in there.
And it's 8:12. I'm just killing time. My contract says to sing a song. Yeah, I made a rhyme.
That doesn't sound like a parody. That sounds like my song.
I think that Steven showed Martin Scorsese the Good Feathers, and he really thought it was funny.
We got a little close to Richard Lewis's material in Noah's Ark cartoon. So I think Richard Lewis's manager said, you know, could you try not to steal all of his material next time? And we said, okay.
Look, I don't know who you think I am, and I wish I cared, but I don't. Get on the boat.
It was an homage, Richard.
No, nobody really, we never heard from anybody. But maybe because of this, they will, and they're going to come after us. So thanks a lot.
Yes, well, I live to destroy careers.
Shoot me.
With that said, Sherry, as people may or may not know, you were the live-action reference for Ariel from The Little Mermaid and Belle from Beauty and the Beast. And something I've noticed is that there's a lot of Disney-related jokes in Animaniacs, particularly in the Slappy the Squirrel cartoons.
That junk's rotting out your brain. No wonder you like that bonkers show.
I even recall one where you blow up, run over, and smash Pluto the dog. Bad memories or just an easy target?
Certainly not bad memories. No. That was a lot of fun. doing the mermaid and Belle. No, probably an easy target. I mean, Slappy, though, not made fun of, but she knew everybody in show business, so everybody was fair game. You know, Hanna-Barbera characters got slapped around a lot by her, too.
She used to date George Jetson.
Of course, Steven Spielberg produced both this show and Tiny Toons, which were both gigantic hits. How involved was he in the process? Because from the look of things, it looks like he was a pretty damn good producer.
Great. I mean, he was involved in the fact that, he was making at the time, I think, Jurassic Park and Schindler's List and whatever, and then he'd be faxing us notes on these little animated scripts we'd write. But mostly he was interested in it being funny and having a different look and a feel and everything else like that.
He read every script. What I remember about him was that you would give him deliver a half-hour script maybe at like 2 o'clock, and by 5 o'clock he would be calling with notes. He was very fast. The turnaround with him was very fast. Now, sometimes, of course, he'd be busy, really busy making a movie or something.
I have a photo of him on the set at Schindler's List looking at like a Pinky and the Brain storyboard. So
I was there maybe 2 months or something, and I had written a little bit, and I got a memo from Steven, and I think it said, "I really liked what you wrote." I think tears began to well in my eyes, and I immediately called my wife at work, and I read her the memo, and look what it said. And then I think I ran throughout the studio. I got a flashlight, and I let everyone read the memos. There was an episode in Freakazoid. It's Freakazoid, and then all of a sudden Wacko comes in, and then Pink and the Brain come in. And there's this whole exchange about what show Steven likes best. Well, Steven likes us best because we got a memo, and that's the memo I was talking about.
If I'm not mistaken, Freakazoid is Steven's favorite show. We got a memo.
And I have the memo still. It's in a safe. I don't let anyone look at it, but it was very, very nice.
I can't complain. I'm one of the few people in the world that actually framed a Twitter from Roger Ebert. So, yeah, I'd be lying if I said I didn't get excited about stupid stuff like that, too.
The beautiful thing was, when people did come after us, or censors, or, he basically would step in and ask others to, like, back off. These guys are doing a good job. They're making the show I want. So it was fabulous.
People ask me, like they ask everyone when they're kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? And so I said I wanted to be Steven Spielberg when I grew up. My parents did a really amazing thing, and they got me a chance to meet him after this big rap party. He just asked me what were my favorite dinosaurs and what were my favorite movies, and I remember just telling him these are the best dinosaurs there are, and these are the best movies, and you should make movies with these dinosaurs, and God, it's so embarrassing. But it was really amazing that he listened to me. Like, I could see that the words I was telling him, like, really sunk in.
Nate, you were a little kid, obviously, when you did the voice of Skippy Squirrel. Did people recognize you? And if they did you keep it low-key, or did you try to soak up the attention?
At first, no one really did recognize me. That's the great part of being in an animated series. You can do all this hard work. You have this other secret identity. But I got interviewed for Sports Illustrated for Kids. They were just going to do a short interview and take a few photos, and it turned into this like 3 or 4 page spread about me as a voice actor. And after that, the secret was out, and it was hard to I wasn't a celebrity though. It was very low key, but it was the worst kind of celebrity for me at that age. I was turning 13. I was trying to appear very masculine and suave to the ladies, but they all thought of me as this cuddly, wuddly, fuzzy little squirrel. And that did not help me with the ladies for quite a while. Yeah.
It's hard being a squirrel. Now, when I watch these cartoons, I really get a feeling of the original Looney Tunes, even more than Tiny Toons, which was literally mimicking the original Looney Tunes. But something about Animaniacs just seemed to have the same creative energy, the same need to hit both the adult audience as well as the children audience. Did they play a big part when writing this? And if not, who did?
We weren't consciously thinking about the old Looney Tunes, saying let's do this thing like Bugs did, but it certainly had to be in our consciousness.
Template I think we used originally were the Marx Brothers. That sort of chaos that they orchestrated in their films. Most of the artists and certainly the writers were very much influenced by the Looney Tunes cartoons.
I think if you take Marx Brothers and Looney Tunes and smash them together, I think you get Animaniacs.
They were so masterful that it was something to aspire to. I don't think they've been surpassed, certainly. To me, I'm still in awe whenever I see the old Warner Brothers cartoons, you know?
For me, Daffy Duck is pretty much the most perfect cartoon character of all time. That was a big influence.
I would know nothing about him being an influence.
What sort of maybe I learned from Looney Tunes was it's all about character. And if you have a great character, you can write a billion episodes. And I think that's what Looney Tunes was all about, rather than sort of necessarily this happens, then this happens, then this happens. The Looney Tunes were like, yeah, Daffy's on a cruise ship. What can happen?
All the cultural major events of our lives, I think everything we had gone through up to the point where we're working on Animaniacs, it was fair game as far as we were concerned.
Any kind of inspired silliness, anything that was just fun for fun's sake would factor in.
You know, Ernie Kovacs, that sort of weird stuff.
I was a big fan of Monty Python and Jonathan Winters.
There were a few Abbott and Costello movies that I virtually had memorized.
Go ahead and tell me. Who? The guy on first. Who? The first base.
Who is on first? Tell me the name of the band on stage. Who? The name of the band. Who? The band on stage. Who?
One of my favorite memories working with Sherry Stoner was doing the Woodstock episode with the what's the name of the band on stage bit. We spent a lot of time together in the booth so we could get the timing just right.
Who? The name of the group. Who? The group on stage. Who? The band. No, the band is performing later.
And then the Jerry Lewis thing for me was just, I was raised in Vegas. I was eight years old, and I would see Jerry Lewis's name on the marquee, and I just thought he was the funniest guy in the world.
Paul, you have a character simply called Mr. Director, who you also do the voice for, and he is obviously a big influence of Jerry Lewis.
You kids are going to be in my movie.
Movie?
Who are you just looking at?
The people watching on TV.
Peoples? What peoples?
Hello, nice people in the TV!
I'm wondering, has he ever seen any of those cartoons?
You know what? I have no idea. Although, when I was at Disney and I was doing a show for them a while back, I tried to get Jerry Lewis to actually do a bit on it, and he said no, and I don't know whether it's because they said, oh, Paul Rugg's the guy that used to do you. I'm not quite sure.
I actually remember there was a tribute on Comedy Central for Jerry Lewis, and one of the clips they showed was Mr. Director acting as Indiana Jones, so chances are he did see one of those cartoons at some point.
Okay, good. See?
And most likely knew who you were and totally snubbed you.
Well, there you go.
Sherry, am I right that you were originally brought into Tiny Toons to mainly write for the Babs Bunny character?
Yeah.
Since that is the case, and you also invented Slappy Squirrel, what I really like about your writing is we have another reviewer called the Nostalgia Chick, and she has a term called the Smurfette Principle. And this is about how a children's show wants to be gender neutral by throwing in a token chick, pretty much. And it's almost a cliche to say men can't write for women, but most of these female leads were written as females first before they were written as actual characters. And I can say, growing up with Babs, Slappy, Dot, I always saw them as characters first before I saw them as females. And I guess what I'm wondering is, was there ever a conscious effort to fight how females were being written in anime shows at that time, or was this just how you saw the characters?
I was never really into girly girl characters when I was young. I remember liking Groucho Marx and Harpo Marx. I liked Bugs Bunny the best out of the Warner Brothers. I liked Gomez on the Addams Family. I always liked the funny one, you know? And so I was never into princesses or any of that kind of thing. So it didn't really factor in for me to write from that perspective for Babs or any of the girl characters that I wrote for, because it wasn't how I looked at the world. And no one ever said, oh, you know, let's bring in girl issues for Babs or for Dot or for anyone. And I don't think I would have, first of all, known. In fact, I know I wouldn't have known how to do that very well, because I don't look at the world that way. I didn't try to make Babs one of the fellas, or I didn't try to make Dot one of the fellas. Certainly not Dot, because, I mean, there's a lot of fun to be had with her playing up her girlish charms that she knows, or at least she thinks she knows what she's got. No, I wasn't conscious. It was just the way I sort of approach things.
Well, let's talk about the animation. The animation was always great, but it did seem to have a lot of variations. The style would change very often. Sometimes it would be very solid, other times it would be very bouncy, sometimes it was subtle, sometimes it was exaggerated. How did that work? Was there different animation groups? Did it depend on the director?
Like 5 different companies that would, be farmed out a certain short.
We were employing most of Asia at the time. We had studios set up all over Korea and Japan, New Zealand at one point.
There was a company called TMS. There was a company called Wang.
Like ACOM, I think, in Japan was one of the top studios. Whatever you sent there always came back looking great.
I could see that like Wang had a style of drawing the Warners that was a little bit more roundy. ACOM was a little bit more, angular and stuff. So yeah, each company had its own way of doing it.
And then other studios, it would depend on, what they were up against. You wouldn't always get their best crew.
We'd get it back, and it would literally look like, Yakko's eyes were melting off his face. And you'd be like, oh, we're in trouble.
Certain ones came back so hashed, you couldn't save them in editing. You had to try and make them into something else.
There would be a detailed storyboard about exactly what would happen. Then the timing person would come in and say, okay, the gag from Yakko to go from this position to this position is so many frames. These days, there isn't as much control. You sort of just, show them your storyboard and you ship it over and you kiss it goodbye and hope nobody looks really gross.
Now let's talk about one of the biggest factors on the show, the music. Particularly the songs. We all know Richard Stone did incredible scores and incredible music, but with every episode there had to be a minimum of like 2 to 5 songs in an episode, many of them using public domain music or satirizing famous musicals. How did writing songs for the show work? Did the writers come up with it? Did the musicians come up with it? Was it sort of both?
We had done a lot of music in improv, and so we were used to throwing it into into sketches. I think for me, what really got me interested in including more music was that it paid residuals.
When we all found out we would get extra money for writing songs, we wrote a lot of songs. No.
For a while, everything I wrote was a light opera.
We had so many great music composers, people scoring the show. Richard Stone and the Bernsteins. Sometimes we would throw them some lyrics that they would also have to turn into little jingles and everything.
You would write the lyrics first, and then it was up to Richard Stone to find a way to make it sound like the original, but not so much that we'd get sued.
What can I say? I love the lyrics.
And the musicians were great. They knew exactly how to craft the songs, to stay within the legal limits at the time.
Anybody could do it. Everybody did it. Everybody. I can't think of anybody that didn't write at least some songs.
Our legal guy, we had one legal guy who'd stop by once every 2 years. He goes, yeah, you guys are doing fine. You're staying off the, you're not getting us any letters from lawyers. So yeah, they were masters. Richard Stone and our other composers were masters at keeping it, just one side of a phone call.
If I were a rich man,
if I were the gut pigeon, cooey, 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 fettuccine, cream sauce, parmesan.
Then we had a guy like Randy Rogel who comes in, and he was working on Batman, and he said, hey, Tom, he walked up one day and said, I got this little song, I wrote it a year ago, and it wasn't particularly written for Animaniacs, but I said, I think it would be cool for your show. And so he played it, and everybody that heard it said, yeah, we should have Yakko. We have Rob Paulson sing this and put it in the show. It really didn't have anything to do with any other part of the show, but it was turned into Yakko's world.
United States, Canada, Mexico, Panama, Haiti, Jamaica, Peru, Republic, Dominican, Cuba, Caribbean, Greenland, El Salvador, too.
Talk about hits on the internet. I mean, people remember the show for this song.
Bolivia, then Argentina, and Ecuador, Chile, Brazil, Costa Rica.
So once we had Rogel aboard, we said, hey, yeah, Randy, you can stay.
And then Rob Paulson, who was so amazing, is so amazing that he could deliver on a song like that, right? I mean, I've seen him do it live. I can't even believe it. He's amazing.
Costa Rica, Belize, Nicaragua, Bermuda, Bahamas, Tobago, San Juan, Paraguay, Uruguay, Suriname, and French Guiana, Barbados, and Guam.
I actually tried memorizing that song when I was a kid. I don't recall doing very well. I think I got up to Canada. But yeah, it's obviously a very well-written song.
My son took the AP history test, and he said kids in the class were singing the president's song before the test. So I thought that was pretty funny.
John Tyler, he liked country folk.
And after him came President Polk.
Zachary Taylor liked to smoke. His breath killed friends whenever he spoke.
Then it became, once we saw how, or Tom saw how successful he was at the first one, then it just became, well, let's let Randy, you know, name all the planets. Let's, you know, name all the molecules, and I don't know what I'm saying, but you know what I mean?
So then we would literally throw Randy a song idea, like, how about, like, you know, you ever been stoned, Randy? I don't think Randy has ever been stoned, but, you know, when you contemplate the universe, Randy, you know, like the whole universe could be on the head of a pin, you know. And so then he wrote Yakko's Universe, which I think is just a beautiful song.
'Cause there's 100 billion galaxies that stretch across the sky, filled with constellations, planets, moons, and stars. And still the universe extends to a place that never ends, which is maybe just inside a little jar.
He really took it to the next level about, you know, what a song for Animaniacs is going to be. And then Deanna, I think she did a whole Good Feathers parody that was all singing and stuff. That was not I couldn't even, that just made my head hurt.
With Les Miserables, that was Deanne Oliver who did that, and she was very familiar with the musical, obviously.
Master of the house, doling out the charm, ready with an handshake and an open palm. Bitten in the butt, got an for tear, took a little nibble from a derriere.
Now, how on earth did you guys get Bernadette Peters? Because that wasn't just a walk-on cameo, that was one of the main characters. She was in the opening credits, and she's pretty much a goddess of Broadway. I mean, she was huge.
I think, honestly, I think Steven Spielberg's name carries a lot of clout.
Andrea Romano and Tom Ruger sort of had talked about it and said, you know, she would be great. Boy, if only we could get her. And then everyone's like, Steven.
I know that Andrea Romano was putting it out there to a lot of singers first. And somehow she got through to Bernadette Peters' people, and she said yes, which was amazing.
At the end of the road is a city of light, the city of romance, where they drink, be merry, and dance, and with any luck at all we'll find shelter tonight.
We were very lucky to get her. We would have to, like, sort of work around her schedule. She would come out once every month, and maybe we'd do 2 or 3 of her cartoons then. And so she would have to learn and sing. There were at least 2 songs per cartoon. Some of them were like ballads and big whopping songs.
There is a flat in Gay Paris, safe on a tree-lined avenue.
She's a performer. She didn't want to do these things like that. I mean, she needed to, like, hone them.
And then what a treat to actually go into a recording session and actually get to hear her sing in person, because it's just astonishing.
Out here in the shadows and out here, there's a promised land out here.
And, you know, some of the performances are almost like, they're almost touching, haunting, you know.
This place, our home.
Paul, I know you and a lot of the writers eventually went on to Freakazoid, and something very interesting that I noticed is that Tiny Toons was very much children-oriented entertainment, Animaniacs was sort of both children and adults. Freakazoid seemed very much surreal, odd, adult humor. And again, was there sort of a conscious effort to follow the age of your audience as they got older?
It could be that we were sort of ready to write that. When Freakazoid came along, I was originally a little hesitant to sort of get into it because it was a superhero thing. But then once we started writing it and realized it didn't really have to be a superhero kind of thing, it just had to be really weird and fun and dumb, then that's what we started writing. So I don't know if it was a conscious decision from anybody, but it just felt like this is what we really feel like writing now.
Tom, I have sort of a weird question. It doesn't have to relate to much here, but it's something that's driven me nuts for a really, really long time. My favorite cartoon is Hooked on a Ceiling, which is where the Warners helped Michelangelo paint the Sistine Chapel. And to me, that's about as perfect as a cartoon as you can get. But why was Michelangelo portrayed as Kirk Douglas?
Out, you incompetent fools! You call yourselves artists?
Instead of Charlton Heston, who played Michelangelo in Agony and the Ecstasy. Why Kirk Douglas?
That's a really good question. That is, like, I think, like the definitive Warner's cartoon. It's like a perfect cartoon. It's beautifully done. You know, here's my guess. We had this great caricature of Kirk Douglas, we didn't have such a great drawing of Charlton Heston. Also, the voice for Kirk is so much funnier than Charlton, at least what we were doing with Charlton.
You fools, I'm the great Michelangelo, and this is the Sistine Chapel.
Oh, yeah? If you're so great, what did you do with the other 15 chapels, huh? Got you there.
I think it had to do with performance and drawing in that case. I guess we could have been parodying the movie closer with Charlton, but it worked.
After the success at Warner Brothers, all of you, of course, went on to do various different things. What have you guys been up to? Like Nate, did you ever consider going back into voice acting at all?
I did think about going back into voice acting, but then puberty hit and my voice cracked, and that pretty much killed my career as a child voice actor. Just so you know, they were actually digitally pitching my voice higher at the end of Animaniacs because my voice had noticeably changed.
That's not Bambi's mom. She's old. I'm gonna eat peanuts and popcorn and Dodger dogs till I barf.
And so I guess instead of going back into voice acting, I have been working my way back into Hollywood as a writer-director. And just recently, I finished a short film called Another Life. It's a neo-noir thriller about a young female veteran who has 3 days to kill an innocent man or they both die.
Not a comedy, then. Okay, not a comedy. So, the rest of you guys, what have you been up to ever since the success of Animaniacs?
I've been gardening.
I've been sitting on my laurels, mostly. Just trying to milk it as much as I can.
After Freakazoid, I did a stint at with Peter Hastings at Disney one Saturday morning, and I did a live-action character for him called Manny the Uncanny.
Often I ask fans that I meet on Facebook and other places for cash or to sign a loan.
Produced and started at a show called Animalia for PBS. Did something called Sushi Pack.
I sold a pilot to Nickelodeon. I'm working on Kung Fu Panda.
Wait, what, Kung Fu Panda like the movie?
It's called Legends of Awesomeness. It's the Nick TV show. So it's CG, but it's half-hour stories.
And John, outside of begging your fans, what have you been doing with your time?
Been writing more short fiction, actually, and working on my first novel right now, which is kind of fun.
I pitch a lot of stuff. I'm getting together with a lot of the people you're interviewing for this to pitch a new show.
And can I ask what that's about?
It's about a flock of vultures. It's the first, to my knowledge, the first totally improv animated sitcom pilot. Gathered together a couple very funny actors, Paul Rugg and John McCann, Sherry Stoner and Deanna Oliver, gathered in a recording studio. By the end of the day, they had improv'd an entirely new animated sitcom.
That sounds awesome. I'm going to support this. I'm going to get behind this show.
I want you to make it happen.
Yeah, hey, you think Spielberg's name carries a lot of clout? The nostalgia critic. Okay, household name. Everybody knows me. Spielberg, some people in China know him. I don't know.
We're going to fly you out here and you're going to improv with these people.
That's right. That's right. My methods of improv are very goodish. So, now how about you, Sherry? What have you been doing with your time?
Well, I'm a mother.
Say no more.
I'm working on a couple of projects of my own that hopefully will see the light of day very, very soon.
And can you tell us about any of these projects?
No.
Oh, boo! Come on, Tom told us about improving vultures.
Oh, well, see? Well, he's tricky.
All right. But because of that, you guys start everybody off by saying who's your favorite character on Animaniacs?
Well, it has to be Slappy. I mean, it would be sort of self-loathing if I didn't say Slappy in a way, wouldn't it?
Well, Skippy the Squirrel's the best, obviously. I made him the best.
Probably Yakko.
I have to go with Yakko. I know a lot of other people like Yakko. It might be prosaic.
I'm going to go with Wacko.
All right, and technically, the last question I'm going to ask you guys is, what's your favorite episode that any of you have worked on?
I like Cookies for Einstein because I was desperate to find a way to end it, and my wife suggested that Acme backwards was sort of like E equals MC squared, so I sort of like that one.
And I think I have two. One is Bumby's mom, and the other would be Bubba Bobob Brain.
Yeah, I really have to name my favorite?
Yes, and you only have 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2,
I'd
1.
say it's a toss-up between Woodstock Slappy and Star Warners.
You still don't win the car.
I really enjoyed Space Probed. I love science fiction, and was able to include a lot of the films that I really like.
I think it's episode 85 that has the two-note song where Wacko is trying to convince Dr. Scratch and Sniff that you can still make music out of just two notes. In that song, there's this childlike joy and wonder in finding beauty in even the simplest music.
Now, there's two more people I would like to talk to, if I can. Paul, I would like to talk with Mr. Director. Is it possible to speak with him?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mr. Director, in your professional opinion, what is the secret of comedy?
Timing. Timing, good coffee, many words that the people you're talking to don't really understand. It's an affectation of brilliance that you exude from your own pores to cause the others to be flattered with your perspiration.
Now, I'm also wondering
Are you understanding what I'm saying? You getting it? Because I'm trying to talk and there's nothing there. Go ahead, but...
Mr. Director, directing is obviously in your name, but I have to admit, I haven't seen any of the films that you have worked on. What are some of the films that you've directed?
The Tin Boy, it was about a boy who was tin, and a rust came and was very sad. Schmecula, I don't know if you saw that. It was a Jewish vampire. I don't know if you saw that. Very good. The Glass People, Flunkin was good, and Bosch.
How'd that last one go again?
Here, say it with me. Say Bosch. Ka Blibben. Bosch ka Blibben.
Could you give me a plot synopsis on that one by any chance?
Yes. There was a man made of dough.
Oh.
He was formed in the oven, much like a creator or God would form you, and he was made of dough. But his arm was, because of a baking accident or something, arm was backwards from the rest of his body. And this caused in him to be mocked, to be ridiculed. And so it's about him finding someone to chew his arm off.
Wow, that's very moving. I gotta say,
No,
I was touched.
You
I was
don't
really
have to
touched
be
by
impressed with it. That's just the first 3 pages.
Oh, really?
After that, there's a war. He goes to a fairyland where there are fireballs, and he's eventually reformed in a new dough and is made whole.
This is sounding like a fairy tale from Tommy Wiseau.
I won an award in Cleveland.
No kidding. And what was that called?
The Award of Cleveland. I'm not saying it was clever, but it was called the Award of Cleveland for that being my movie.
Now, Mr. Director, I recall a character, a clown specifically, who was hired to terrorize Wacko at one point. And I must say he bears an unbelievable likeness to you, even has a very similar voice.
Hello, I'm a puppy, Bart Leavenworth.
Distant relative, or...?
What's is very interesting here, and I will tell this to no one else.
Uh-huh.
That I had a desperate time. Things were not working well for me. I was in foreclosure on a boat that I lived on. And in order to pay the bills, I hate to admit this, I had to do that part. And that was actually me. But in hindsight, I think it was brilliant. There was talk of me winning an Emmy, but I didn't. Because I didn't, but there was talk of it.
And, do you ever have any temptations about returning to the clownhood?
To the clownhood?
Yeah, it's not a gang film starring Bozo. It's a state of being.
For me, singing songs,
Being silly, making a laugh.
See, just when you mention it there, you
Bring it out of me.
So, excuse me, but that had to come out. I'm sorry.
It's cool. I would know nothing about sudden impulses. Now, Mr. Director, very last question. In your opinion, again, your professional opinion, what is funny? What is the absolute bare essence of funny?
All right, go with me on a thought experiment.
Okay.
You're in a jungle. There's an elephant, and it's chasing you. The elephant knocks you to the ground. I'm still going with this. I'm just formulating
I'm
so
totally
that
with you,
at
man.
its most brilliant that you can understand. Repeat after me. I'm in the jungle.
I'm in the jungle.
An elephant's chasing me.
An elephant is chasing me.
It knocked me down.
It knocked me down.
And then it makes a poop. That's pretty much. So you didn't expect it. Did you? You were expecting maybe to be, but then it makes a poop. And
yeah,
for me,
I have to admit, I did not see that coming.
That's comedy.
Thank you so much, Mr. Director. I can see why they call you a genius.
Thank you.
Now, Sherry, is there any chance we can talk to Slappy Squirrel for a moment?
I'll do my best. Okay. Yeah.
Slappy, what has happened with cartoons nowadays? I mean, they just don't seem as funny as they were in the old days.
Yeah, they're no good. I'll tell you why. They're hiring hacks to be in them. A bunch of prima donna hacks that don't know how to take any dynamite to the head. Nobody's falling down anymore. Nobody's getting hurt. They just stand there and yak, 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 yak. When's the last time the Family Guy got hit on the head with a mallet? You ain't gonna see it.
Now, Slappy, you've obviously known a lot of cartoon characters that have gotten the dirt on a good chunk of them. Tell me, who was the most shocking that you ever had to work with?
Judy Jetson.
Really? I would have guessed that.
Yeah, Judy Jetson was a handful. She made Lindsay Lohan look like Shirley Temple. You know what I'm talking about? She was a mess, a nightmare, never wore underpants.
No kidding. I'll have to watch more of the Jetsons. Now, we all know that olive oil has never been the same ever since her breast reduction. But what I'm wondering is, did any of that have to do with Popeye's spinach abuse? Did you know the couple well, or was there any truth to these rumors?
It was sad, really. You know, poor Olive Oil. Well, nowadays they would have probably put her in some sort of rehab facility for eating disorders. But in her day, it was just, lose weight, it's funny, lose weight, it's funny, you know, turn sideways, can't see her, that sort of thing. And the poor girl went for it. She finally went invisible completely. No one's heard of her. I always suspected that Woody Woodpecker was a pill popper. Was there any suspicion that he had an addictive personality? Yeah, he was a wood addict. Oak. Oh, well, that's tragic. Couldn't get enough of this stuff. Used to call him a little pecker. He was, too. Slappy, what do you think about cartoon characters nowadays? Like, I don't know, what do you think about SpongeBob? Now, you know I adore that SpongeBob. What a nice kid. He's written me so many fan letters. He once camped out on my lawn. You know, he's almost a stalker, really. He's a very, very nice guy. And very subdued in real life. Very calm. Very zen. You know, he's a Buddhist. I did not know that. One of the wisest individuals I've ever met. Very nice. Slappy, you have a nephew named Skippy, and you two obviously spend a lot of time together, but it almost seems like he's living with you. You're practically taking care of him. Where are his parents? They're on sabbatical. That's so? Wow. They went on a cruise shortly after Skippy was born, and they haven't returned. They're seeing the world, seeing the sights, living the high life. We don't speak much, but they're very kind people. Yeah, they sound real attentive there. They sound like real caring people, I must say. They send me a check every month. Now, Slappy, I got one last question for you. Are you aware of a woman named Sherry Stoner? Yes. What were your impressions of her? She's very tiny. And that's all I got. Guys, thank you so much for doing this. This was just so friggin' awesome.
One final thing, I just want you to be able to see that. You know, we won a bunch of Emmys. So, you know, and what do you do with these things? So what we did was we planted a couple and we got a crop. I don't know if you can see this.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so, you know, we bring in this crop every year.
That's a very impressive crop.
And then we, you know, at Halloween we hand them out because, you know, what do you do with them? We're going to ship out a load of these to you, Nostalgia Critico, as soon as we can.
Thank you, Tom Ruger Emmy. I'll put that right next to my Roger Ebert Twitter. Guys, thank you so much for doing this. This is just a dream come true. I love Animaniacs. I love the work you guys put into it. I think it's a wonderful show. I really think it holds up. Thank you all for doing this again. I have one last question, and that question is for Nate. Nate, I know it's been several years ago, but I simply gotta ask. Can you say water go down the hole?
Oh my god, man. You really want me to say that? You really want me to say that again?
Yes, say water go down the hole.
I'm 26 years old. It's been 17 years. I'm a grown man.
Fuck the fact that you're a grown man. Just say the line. Go on, say it. Say it. Say it!
Water go down the hole.
That was wonderful. Now say it while wearing a diaper.
No chance in hell.
Nate, where are you going? Don't you run away from me. I'm supporting your dad's weird vulture idea. Nate! You fluffy-tailed bastard, I'll get you for this! You will say that lie while wearing a diaper! First you, and then one day, yours! Oh, interview go down the hole.
Water go down the hole.